Florida. Tell us how you got there.
University of Florida. Well, I have graduated with a bachelor's and a master's in business administration from Oklahoma State University in 1986. So I went back home to Cyprus. I worked there for 3 years, but I always wanted to get into communications, and especially in TV. And so I was still young and free, not any take two.
You're doing fine.
You were showing your wild oats, okay.
Okay.
And you don't have to repeat the first part. We got that, so just...
Yeah. So I can start from... So I went back home, and I still wanted to get into communications, especially in TV. And therefore I decided to come back to the States and do another master's in mass communication. I did my search, and I knew that the University of Florida had a strong program. They offered me a scholarship. So next thing I knew, I was here studying in communications, master's, for 1990. So I came here, and during orientation week, if I recall well, we started having trouble on campus. We had this guy, a serial killer, and I really started feeling very unsafe coming from a different environment where things were still crime was not as it is now, but coming here and as a student and leaving a job, coming here to study again, and having this other variable affecting, my new life, it did really make a big difference. It affected me a lot. So, and I was alone. I didn't know a lot of people. I made also only few friends at the time, and one of them was Susan, who received me, and she showed me around. She helped me find a house, and took me to different places to shop, to get everything that I needed, the basics for the apartment that I was staying at on my own. I also met Jenny Rollinson from Britain, and therefore during Labor Week, when everybody was fleeing the campus, Jenny said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I don't know. What should I do? I mean, I guess I would stay here." So she said, "Okay, maybe I'll stay here too." But then Susan offered us to go down with her to West Palm Beach. But because she didn't have space in her house, she said that we could stay with her friend, Nancy. Well, I didn't know Nancy. Jenny did. So I felt a bit uncomfortable with the whole idea, but it was better than staying alone in Gainesville. Everybody was gone. Only Donahue will come there for a show, if I recall well. We've met in a parking lot with Nancy. That's where I met Nancy. We went to West Palm Beach, and I stayed with Nancy and Jenny at Nancy's parents' house, where I had my first non-stop sleep in the States, and I really got to know Nancy better, and Jenny and Susan. So that's how the friendship started, really, because of that incident in Gainesville.
No.
So one day, as I was working in my office, I received this email from Susan, and that had, almost 20 years passed, and asking me if it's George Sigalidis that studied with her at the University of Florida. So I immediately replied yes. So the next day I received an email saying that we need to talk. I found out that my biological father is Greek Cypriot, and it's a long story, and if you can communicate with me on the phone, I will call you. Just send me the phone number. So that's what we did during that weekend. So she calls me, we caught up with our news, and she tells me that she found out about her father and if she could come to Cyprus, but she didn't want to get in touch with the family, and she didn't know how anyway, but even if she did, she felt very uncomfortable to do that, and if I could help her with that. So I said, yeah, definitely. And that was a big challenge for me because apart from the fact that I wanted to help Susan, it just reminded me going back to my investigative years in the state TV when I was doing investigative reporting. So that was really a challenge for me. So I found her aunt, Sula Ekonomidou, and on the yellow pages. I mean, I just opened the directory, the phone directory, and I found the name that Nancy gave me. Sorry, Susan, yeah. So what I did is that I opened the telephone directory, and I found the name of Sula Ekonomidou that Susan gave me, and I called her up and I said, you don't know me, I'm George, I used to study in the States, I have a very good friend who is wondering if you are a relative with Panos Kilalis. Well, of course, that raised questions for her. And she was like, why are you asking this? So the conversation went to a point where she was, are you telling me that Panos had a daughter or has a daughter? I said, well, yes, it seems so. So she was very, very positive about the whole thing, and she wanted to meet her right away. I said, well, I have to let her know, you know, and she has to come here and visit. So what I did is that I met with Sula, and she gave me some leads, and then I started building Susan's family tree, which was quite exciting because I got to interview a lot of different people. I got different leads here and there. And actually, when Susan and Nancy came and I showed them my chart, they just couldn't believe it. Sula could not believe it either because she didn't know all these people that I had on the chart, even though they are related to her. So it's a big family anyway. Well, one thing led to another. So in May of that same year, 2010, Susan and Nancy came and visited. I received them at the airport. They stayed at our place for a week and some days. We traveled everywhere. Of course, Susan got to meet the relatives, but we also had a chance to travel around. And we also went to North Cyprus, and because she wanted to meet with, to see the birthplace of her father. And also we visited the monastery of Apostolos Andreas, which is the most known and famous monastery in Cyprus. And that's one of the favorite places of her father. So she wanted to go there. Then, well, that was the first year, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So.
Context, this may or may not figure into the story, but I don't think people could possibly understand what it was like to ask George and his wife to take us to northern Cyprus because of the Green Line, and I don't know if that's anything you wanted to say about or no? No?
Might be a little hard to work in,
To
but I'm going to
figure out.
ask something similar to that.
Yeah.
You've spent an awful lot of time since 2010 assisting somebody that you hadn't seen for kind of 20 years at this point. Having now done that and been through this process with Susan and John and ultimately meeting Alan and all, what does this now mean to you personally?
Well, I'm a firm believer of my philosophy is that life plays a lot of games to everybody, you know, and it's just a coincidence that all these things happen, and it happened to me and to Nancy and to Susan and to everybody else who is involved in this story. It's just amazing that things can lead, you know, from one point to another without even imagining it in your wildest dreams. I mean, who would have told me that after 20 years I would get a phone call from a very good friend of mine that I met at Gainesville, and we lost contact. And we'll end up now in this situation, which is fascinating, but at the same time sad. But to me, what's important is that if you can be able to help somebody, you should do it.
Tell us about the Susan that you now know, having now been with her several different times.
The Susan that I knew at Gainesville was the Susan that I welcomed in Cyprus in 2010. And same applies to Nancy. We had a great time, we laughed, we shared our stories. And of course, the worries that were there at the time. Still, it was not yet for sure that she would develop ALS, because it was mimicking ALS, the symptoms that she had. Then after she left in 2010 and after the diagnosis, and we still kept in contact, and you know, we will exchange emails, and Nancy will let us know more of her news. I just felt that that was a very tough time for Susan, and a tough decision that she took to proceed the way that she decided to. And it seems that this was the best decision for her, and it teaches a lot of us and the rest of the world how to approach life when we come across great obstacles.
How about the second trip to Cyprus?
The second trip to Cyprus? When I went to the airport to get Susan and Nancy and John and Ellen, her biological mother, in 2012, I knew that things would be totally different, because Susan was already on a wheelchair. But I just tried to be the usual George as she knew me. So, and I think that I managed to do that. I also had my little son with me, who was very upset with the whole scene, but we made him feel comfortable. Susan and I did talk to him, and we just said that this is how things go in life. Unfortunately, I stayed only for 3 days during their stay there, because we had to go somewhere else. And I arranged a party at my place, so I invited also her family from the Cyprus side, and where we again shared Susan's stories through Nancy, because at the time she could not talk much. It was quite touching night.